Thank you very much. Should I have a microphone? Yes. Okay. Yes. I'll have a seat. Okay, thank you for having me, and thank you for having the opportunity to visit Stammen. I haven't been here before, but I have friends who have been here, and I think one of Jacobsen Svart's friends, which is Confianza, maybe deliver some coffee here. Yeah, that's fantastic. So, and that actually ties into what I'm going to talk about today. So, firstly, what is Jacobsen and Svart? Jacobsen is this. Svart is the coffee. So, and we've been doing it since 2012, and we've been having a quite interesting travel from being, we are still a very small business. We have a turnover around 3.5, maybe 4 million per year. We're 3 departments today. We're building a kitchen. And the idea is that everything that we touch should be something we know, that we trust is pure, and that we have a relationship with all the producers. That's the initial idea. But when it comes to coffee, the idea about Trøndersk light roast, it goes back to something like this. In 2012, it wasn't really a consensus about how to roast coffee. So coffee was mainly roasted by something what we used to call voodoo science. Some people thought that socks were important to roast a good coffee, and other people were thinking about the green coffee beans. Now, Jacobsen Svart played a role in that when it came to the science, because we had actually some people at NTNU who were doing research about 2 or 3 sort of like heating, should you call it paradox? So it's mainly about like how you heat up a coffee bean. So you can use like touch warm, you can use air warm, or you can use an indirect warm, like infrared. So Jacobsen Svart started playing around that, and we did some crazy stuff back then. And 13 years later, here I am. And I'm talking about our core values, which is peace, love, and coffee. And it actually goes into something that has become more like a life goal, which is mainly about the community. Because coffee consists of people all over. And in the coffee business, transparency has been a huge part of what we've been doing. And that's been mainly our, like there was a Norwegian woman in the 70s called Erna Knutsen. She was from Norway, but she moved with her family to the US in, I think it was the 50s or something like that. And in 1970s, she promoted a term called terroir into the coffee. What it meant is that if I make a coffee and Patrick makes a coffee, there's a difference between how the agriculture is set up, like local winds, how the soil is, how much plants there is, and stuff like that is very important to how the coffee sort of develops. And coffee is such a small, like it's very small particles. It's basically like air gaps in the coffee seed, which makes taste, which can taste like watermelon, it can taste like strawberries, blueberries, it can taste like apple, it can taste sour, and all of this stuff. So our mission is sort of like to make that come together into something that you want to put in your mouth instead of just oil. Because coffee is one of the commodities that is traded, like it's one of the 10 most traded commodities in the stock exchange. And there's actually quite interesting time because if you look at the coffee prices, back to the 80s, it was standing still. Timor-Leste, which is the Confianza project, has been working on what is sustainable coffee business, and they found out in Timor-Leste Since the 80s, they have been paid $4 per kilo produced of green coffee. Now, in 1980s, that was probably a good salary. In 2025, that's a really bad salary, and it's not a development. Why the coffee stock exchange hasn't followed the trends is also quite curious, because if you look at Brazil, for instance, a lot of the rainforest is actually cut down to make coffee, which is a paradox. It's so stupid. And that's one of the reasons why we think we should make better coffee, because it's like having a good cup of wine. You don't need to drink 6 cups of wine or glasses, or however you like it. But if you have one, then there is something else. You are actually contributing to a community, which is also connected into a local community, and it's all that stuff. And that's how a small cafe, a small roastery, sort of connects into the world, I think. So what we do is light roasted coffee. Like, what's the difference between dark roast and a light roast? So it's kind of like this. If you have, in Norway, we have had a lot of commodities that we have been traded around the world since 2,000 years ago, or probably more, which is, we used to have really good fish, which we took into the world, and back we took spices, chocolate, stuff like that, during the times, and then came the Industrial Revolution. Coffee roasters was one of the first inventions leading into the Industrial Revolution. So coffee plays a huge part in how sort of the society works, because it's one of the first things you start your day with. It's connected into productivity, creativity, and if you go into the philosophy, it's actually, you find recipes going back to the 1700s of poets and stuff like that, who had their recipe on how to make coffee, sort of have you heard about where you put butter and coffee together and stuff like that? Yeah, so it's sort of like an energy drink, which is really the perspective that we're looking at. And science, modern science, actually today, I think it was in 2017, we had a project with NTNU, where we took our coffee and we shot it through a nuclear mass spectrometer, which can measure the protons on such an exact level that we can see exactly how many molecules, atoms, or whatever. I'm not a scientist, so I'm a coffee guy, but the scientist knows all the data. What we discovered is if you have a lot of caffeine, which is actually found in specialty coffee, there is a correspondence of sugars. Now, the caffeine is, we think of it as a God's gift to keeping us awake, but it's, and that's a good one. But you have the other perspective, which is actually related to that caffeine is the nature's pesticides. You can find caffeine even on leaves. So caffeine isn't really special, but it's really special that coffee has this huge amount of caffeine. Where does that fit into the sort of the biological order? That I don't know. But what I know is that when you do what we call a true Norwegian roast, is basically a light roasted coffee. What it means is you sort of when you roast the coffee darker, you take away all the flavors. When you roast it lighter, there's an art of sort of finding the right balance. So it's kind of like making a good wine. A good wine takes years to develop. A coffee takes 12 minutes to roast. So it's quite efficient when it comes to what our target is and when we can measure it. So, and it's also connected into paying a fair price. Living wages are, I think we are talking too little about human rights in this world and too much about politics. Like, what I mean about that is that when we are talking wages and stuff like that, the commodity business isn't really providing all the, like the first producer and stuff like that, the fair wages. You can see that in milk prices and stuff like that. And without the sort of like the human rights perspective in the bottom, it sort of falls apart. So the project today is sort of like looking into like, as you do here in Stammen too, like you have volunteers, you want to sort of like create a community and you get blocked by bureaucratic stuff. It's a bit unnecessary because, not unnecessary because of the bureaucratics, because yes, thank you. That's what protects us for idiots. Like probably Trump, which is the easiest example today. But you also have the other side of it, which also is supposed to protect us as the people. And today it's actually not quite working as it should. And that is also a project that the coffee community is working quite efficient about. Like, what is the correct way to do this? So that goes into the Norwegian rose sort of philosophy. And why do we call it like the Norwegian way? Because I don't think it's actually special to Norwegians, but I think it's special that Norway has quite an interesting history when it comes to trading commodities, and it goes back a long way. And you can see that post and pre-World War, you can see that in chocolate, you can see that in everything. And today, all of the sort of rules that we were sort of common in the trade, they have sort of diluted for profits. So instead of putting better chocolate in your chocolate bar, the idea today is to compensate that with cheaper sugar, because sugar is so cheap. And that's when you look at sugar and how much mass production there is of sugar, you have no control over where the sugar is coming from. So if it's slavery or not, you have no idea, and you can't measure that. So that's, again, that's sort of like the big topic of the coffee world that we are working against, and to prove that is basically the taste. Because in the simplest form, if I am an asshole to the farmers or the coffee traders, I will get shit product back. If I'm talking to them about the cheapest coffee, I will get the baddest product from them. If I buy a container, I will get coffee, probably some pants, some shoes, maybe some weights and stuff like that, because they also need to make money. Huh? So again, it all comes back to the like trying to like the product should talk for itself, and it's not possible to make a great product with assholes. Yes, there's a hand there. Hey.
Thank you. Question: how are you working with this movement of bringing Robusta to Europe? Because Robusta has more. So you have Arabica and Robusta. These are two main things, main types of coffee. Arabica is more expensive. Robusta is cheaper. But now I've seen this movement because Robusta has more caffeine. So then they are like trying to bring this new storytelling, like to drink Robusta instead of Arabica because Robusta has more caffeine. Like how do you see this? Because Robusta is cheaper, right?
Yes. Robusta is, there are two, or actually three, sort of like default coffee genes. One of them is Liberica, and you find that mostly in the Middle East, probably Mediterranean, and that is probably Robusta, grown in low altitudes. Now, Robusta doesn't really have all the like chemical benefits that Arabica has, and that has to do with its genes. It's much simpler coffee bean, but it's also a more sustainable coffee bean. That is true. The problem with it is that it's so mass-produced, and mainly, like if you look to the history, that's where the Italians started. Like Robusta is the start of the Italian coffee culture, which is mainly the start of like European espresso culture. That's the modern times. But you also have the back in the days. You have that in what I sort of like Mediterranean sort of areas, where where it was used into chocolate bars and stuff like that. That's like 1700 and 1800. So Robusta is trying to achieve this a better, how should you say? It's trying to become like a more sustainable, sort of like more transparent trade. It's a development. It goes fast. Probably 5 years from now, I think it will be more and more like implemented into like what you call it. You can get it probably everywhere. But it's sort of like Arabica is sort of like the coin of the trade because of the complexity of it. So basically, if I put my label and my effort into it, I get much more value out of using Arabica than using a Robusta. That's one of the main problems today. And it's a price issue. So coffee has a huge, interesting history, which I kind of summarize, but I want to sort of like take it a bit down into this. So we do mainly 3 types of roast. Like the light roast is basically when you roast the coffee, you will lose some moisture. When you lose the moisture around 11%, it's considered like default. So that's when you can taste every aspect of the coffee. So if Pedro has made 1 coffee and if Jose has made 1 coffee, then if I roast it to 11% moisture loss, I can almost feel or taste how much effort they put it into the coffee because it shines through all the complexity that is in the coffee. You can't get complexity without touching it or doing something to manipulate the flavors. Yeah. So, and craft roast is one way to approach the light roast, where we basically use a single drum roaster. I don't think anybody does that in Norway like today, but it used to be more common back in the days. So a single roaster means that you have a clear contact between the coffee bean and the heater, which means that if I apply the heat, it will take me 10 seconds to see a reaction. With a double drum, which delays the process, then it takes me 2 minutes to come up to a new energy plateau, so to say. So it's a very direct way of doing things, and you have to have a bit of knowledge about weather and stuff like that. You're exposed to that in Norway because we have 4 seasons in a day in the best summer days. And yeah. And then we also do something called precision roast. Precision roast is something really, really new. It's a very scientific way with like 27 different probes where we can measure heat in different ways and different reactions of heat. We don't simply know how to use all that knowledge yet, but what we can do with it is gives us access to manipulate the flowers in much broader way than we were able to do before. So that is the precision roaster. And yeah, that's it. That's a question thing, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah? Any questions? Thank you very much. Yes?
You use the term coffee community. What is a coffee community?
It becomes a community of coffee when we stand in our kitchens and we take a photo of something and we share it on the online community and we're sharing the experience of that coffee. It's in the simplest form. Then you have a more advanced form, which is basically all the people who are like looking into improving the coffee. Like what is in coffee, we have a cup. We have a system where it can give points, and it's supposed to be neutral, so to say, but it isn't, because sensory will always be a personal experience. Like if I can talk about that too, but it's a really interesting perspective because it relies very much on your experience, how we from Norway experience taste and how people from China, Australia considers taste. It's mainly what is in the supermarkets, what sort of milk is, and stuff like that. So it's the basics. And the community of coffee sort of starts there and sort of like, I don't know if it ends there, but I think it absolutely grows there. So I think I see it more and more as an interest, not only privilege to the coffee community. I think it's more about taste has something to do with it, experience, and sort of like looking into sort of like, I think the tea culture is a much better way, like platform. It has an older history. But the tea is like you have a ceremony in Japan, you have a ceremony in China, in Taiwan. You have different levels of sort of like doing it. It's sort of implemented in your society, in the language. Skal vi ta en kaffe? Should we have a coffee? You can say that to your bank counselor, or you can say that to someone you meet in the street. And it's something that we all know. And we have rules which are not written, but we all know them. So that's sort of like the community, the invisible community of coffee. Yes?
I was just wondering, I think Norway is one of the countries in the world that consumes quite a lot, maybe the most coffee per capita. And you came in to this quite late. How is it possible to contribute with something new and when we are so established consumers, and how was it difficult to get into the market?
When I started in 2012, there was not, like today, Michelin restaurants is a part of Trondheim. It was not back then in 2012. So everybody was drinking bad shit. And it's sort of like, where does the coffee come from? Well, it comes from Indonesia. Okay, yeah, okay. Where in Indonesia? Well, I don't know. Okay, so I think it was hard back then, and I think today it's become easier. But I think we still have a long way to go, because like it's not really about coffee. It's actually more about food. Because food production, particularly in Norway, it's not really like, I don't know if you can call it lønnsomt, that it is any bit beneficial. I don't know, you make some, you have a farm. When you are selling something to like the butcher, how much do you earn per kilo or per animal?
It could be from 6 kroner to 100 kroner.
And how much work is it per day? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot.
Exactly. So it doesn't make sense. And why is it like that? Because if I educate myself to be a lawyer and I just make some fancy schmancy words and talk myself out of the responsibility, and that's my job, I get 4,000 kroner per an SMS. That's the salary. That's the taxes. Yeah? And if you make an honest work, you will get 6 kroner or 100 kroner. Yeah? So there's something really wrong with the food system. And we can't talk about sustainability on the planet without foods. That's what I don't understand is not a collective matter, because it really is. Because in Norway, for instance, we are not self-sufficient at all. Like we are reliant on import, on everything. And that's not really a bad thing. But without the system, it is a bad thing, because there is no control. Again, bureaucracy is also a necessity. You need someone to check. But if the bureaucracy isn't working, and even them are talking themselves out of the responsibility because we want to build cabins instead of farms, then you have this huge problem. And this problem is also escalating. And I think coffee is like one of our food systems. That's really one of the main concerns that we have today. We're just tearing shit down to build cabins and stuff like that, which are mainly hosted 3 weeks per year, and they pay full price for a house. I don't see any reason for that.
We have a video that we want to play as well.
Oh, there's a question more? Yeah?
It's this type, when you're roasting coffee bean across roast, you have dates and numbers about that. Is coffee coffee beans, right? What's the balance between knowledge and instinct you use when you're doing craft roast?
I call it alchemy. That's yeah. After 13 years of roasting, and 17 years as a barista, I think it's alchemy, and I think it's an undervalued part, because our humans are. I believe that we have a consciousness. We can call it soul. We can call it God. We can call it whatever. But there's something in us, an inner compass, that sort of is a wisdom that is imprinted with our humans. It's either in the society or our genes. I don't know. But somewhere it is. And I think we all can pinpoint that it's more or less a fact. And then you have the other thing, it's the intelligence of it. And you need the intelligence. AI today is not wisdom, it's intelligence. It can answer you shortly on a very complex matter. But how to use it, it doesn't tell you anything about that. Then you have knowledge without sort of like the wisdom or the education. The problem with that is two parts, as I see it. Because you don't know, or don't have the reason why you're doing it. And I see that is going into the food industry, because because everybody needs food. You can mass market everything. You can sell every shit you want. But in the other part of it, it's like, why? Why are you contributing? What does that help? Other than you're getting rich, what is my part? Or the thousands of others that are actually supporting that product. So there is sort of like a hierarchy that doesn't quite work as it should. Now, I believe that's, again, it's something with the distribution and stuff like that. And then when it comes back to the roasting part, it's two parts. It's the science part, which is hardcore science. And you have the other part, which is intuition, it's knowledge, and it's also like when you're tasting stuff, it's actually related to your pulse, for instance. So if you have high pulse, look at, what's it called? The bicycle guys in Italy. They're like Tour de France. It's in France, of course. Okay, sorry. A bit of a miss there. But you have Tour de France. Tour de France, they mix 50% Coca-Cola with 50% coffee. Have you tasted that? It's so bad. It's horrible. It's so nasty. And you can't drink that when your pulse is like, let's say you have a resting pulse. Let's say you have 5 zones. First zone is basically where you're sleeping and you're thinking and probably walking. And then you go to the next step, which is 2, which is basically where you... Yes. yeah, no worries. It's too much information, probably. Yeah.
I will organize another event for you. We go to your Melwick and see how you roast coffee and you make coffee.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. Yeah, you should come. We're actually building a new roaster. Yes. Cool.